Hello everyone, this is the game of the week, and I'm Grandmaster Denes Boros. So, in this lecture we're going to talk about a new rising star, namely Alireza Firouzja. And so one of the games which will be the high point of this lecture is the famous game that was between Firouzja and Carlsen. But it was very interesting and tense, so we're going to take a look at that one. But first, I was kind of curious myself what makes Firouzja's chess unique. And in fact, if you know Misha Tal, his brand of chess won't be that foreign to you. So let's start with his match that he played in 2019 against Jorge Cori, who was 2700 GM. He's still a very strong grandmaster, but in this match, Firouzja showed how talented he is. So let's take a look at these games. So d4, e5. Now, whenever you see knight f6, e5 from a 2600 plus grandmaster, you can already sense that must be an enterprising player. And indeed, Firouzja, as far as I saw, and you will see, really likes to get the initiative and go for the attacks. Yeah, this is the Budapest, yes. D takes, knight g4, knight f3. Now, the big question is obviously, what if bishop f4? And this is considered fairly dubious for black. But Cori is not very well known for playing the main lines. He likes to get interesting middle games, but is not that excited to get into theoretical debates. So he goes knight f3, bishop c5, e3, knight c6, knight c3, castle, rook e8. So far, standard chess. b3. But here, again, Firouzja comes up with a nice and very unique way of playing. Let's try to find that out. What could have Firouzja played here?
You would expect him to play something like d6. That can't be
So d6 is the casual move that everyone would play,
right.
but
So you could go the other way.
But Firouzja is more aiming for the enterprising play.
Is it b6? a5?
Close. It's not b6. That'd be b5 would be a bit too enterprising.
That's what I thought, but I want to make sure. c6. a6.
So if I'd say that this rook is going to show up on h6, I wouldn't be lying.
So a5.
Yeah, a5. So just before the viewers think that the Budapest is not at all played by top players, that's not entirely true. In fact, Magnus played it sometimes in rapid chess, and also most notably Richard Rapport beat Galfond with the Budapest. So it's a little bit underrated. It's still under pressure, as I mentioned in the bishop f4 line, but it's still playable. So now Firouzja is going for this maneuver of rook a6, rook h6, with not a single peaceful intention in mind. Bishop b2, rook a6, queen d5, bishop a7. Now a piece is a piece, so he's not going to give it for free. Bishop a7, knight e4, seemingly putting a lot of pressure on black's center. But Firouzja thinks otherwise.
That knight with d6 without shutting your rook out, but he played rook a to e6, and then
You can go rook e6, yes, definitely, but that's not kind of the goal of your play. You're trying really hard to checkmate. Don't ever lose the goal of the game. Checkmate ends it all.
Well, it's attacked twice.
Yeah. So it is attacked twice. Yes, rook h6. Boom. You're giving up the knight, but then, so white actually didn't take. He took the pawn instead. If you take here, I have this little sneaky move, c6, and you can't really defend this bishop no longer, because this square is defended. I'm defending that pawn, and once your queen moves or drops back to d3, I capture it, and I still have a big attack brewing. So this, yeah, I can't have both of my rooks swinging over exactly. I could get my other rook to h5. Well, I still have to tend with that bishop, but it's not far-fetched. You could probably go rook e6, rook g6. In any case, Cori took on a5. Bishop b6, and you'll never guess the best move in this position. Yes, it's queen a8, which looks totally counterintuitive. But the point is, otherwise, this would be kind of brutal. Still very strong, but queen a8 is kind of fighting back. d6, c5, you've got to find some counter chances. Queen h4 happens. Now, also note that you'll have to defend this rook at some moment. You can't really go and sack on h3. For example, if you go back here, eventually these h3 ideas could be facing some d6 bishop takes h3 stuff. Now probably I have to go f3 immediately because I have this double threat though. So queen a8, let's go back to the game. c5, queen h4, bishop takes e5, de. But there's one defense here. So note that this knight needs some protection. But also we don't want to get checkmated. Yeah, that's also a thing.
Oh, I see. So yeah, you play
f3. f3, defending both the knight, and I mean you do give up that pawn, but you don't get checkmated, and you save the knight. So that's kind of a good deal. f3 takes rook g6. Some more enterprising play. It's putting pressure on this pawn. Now you could try to take here, but then Firouzja is going to bulldoze you on the second rank. Just take everything. And that'd be sad. So Cori plays rook g1, bishop d7, queen h3, bishop h3, bishop f1. So far, good attacking play by black, good defense by white. So this is a critical moment. Black needs to find the right way to continue. Rook d8. Yeah, so there's not much luxury left in this position. Your bishop is kind of saying his last prayers on b6. But on the other hand, that king doesn't feel safe on f2 either. f5, yes, let's go. Typical Firouzja. Going all in. Queen a4. And another critical moment. Yeah, we do have to tend for that rook. So, in fact, rook d8 was played, and it turns out it's a mistake. In fact, king f8 would have been the best move, and then you can roll with the attack. Oh, with fe, and you have a big attack going. But rook d8 is surprisingly, you'd expect to be really good. But the fact is, your king is just as weak as the white one. In fact, it could get even more into more trouble. So check. Oh, not that one. Actually, no, rook d1. Rook d1 is very strong. Was spotted and was a very strong move. You can't take because we say bye-bye. It's queen a8 checkmate. So you take, and it's mate. Yeah. So it's an illusion that black is in total control. Now Cori is actually the one pressing here. Rook f8 was good. Queen c4, king h8. And here, Cori misses a brilliant move. Queen f7 is actually the move he played. In fact, the move is knight g5. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Rook takes g5, and the queen drops all the way to h4, and I'm just gonna take everything. So if you go rook g6, I'll take your bishop first, and I'm gonna ask you, how are you going to defend that bishop? And you're not able to. Because I have some back rank ideas as well. Also, that after I take on h3, exchange queens, I'm up a piece, I'm winning. So this was the fantastic idea that Cori missed, is that white can actually sack a whole piece. But because he basically have a triple attack on black's pieces, he's winning the game. Yeah.
I said the move knight g5 to myself, but I didn't know that did anything.
Yeah.
So
there's
a forcing move.
Yeah. Yeah, so knight g5, it not just threatens knight f7, knight takes h3 is also a big threat, yes. So this would have been the killer blow. But Cori missed it, played queen f7, rook g8, knight g5, but now it's too late. Takes, and the attack is still raging. Though that this king is kind of safeguarding all of his guys, but they can't move at all. Queen c7, h6, rook d8, takes check, takes king h7, and here white resigned because he's stuck and I'm still roaming down with my pawns. Now if white would try to go queen b8, try to win the pawn, it would just go queen h2, attacking that g1 rook, king f2. And I have this very nice move, rook g3, with the simple threat of rook takes f3. Bishop c4, you think you're mating, no you're not. Takes, check, and we say hello to the b8 queen. So that's kind of the reason that Firouzja won this game at that moment after king h7, because it's very hard to defend against this idea of taking rook g3 and rook f3. Now you can stay on f1 with your bishop, but then I'm just going to go rook g3, rook f3, and take on g1 and take everything. So that was one typical Firouzja game where he aggressively sacrificed everything and won. But how about a second game? In fact, if you're watching this in order, this game was played before the other game. And again, this is going to be a d4 system. So here, white plays this interesting idea of knight h4. This was a big idea some time ago, but has been analyzed these days. e5, d5. Now the knight can move to many places, but if we're getting familiar with Firouzja's style, where would you post your knight?
He wants to attack.
Yes.
In somewhere.
Exactly. He will be looking for some aggressive moves.
So knight e4.
If you go there, I'll take that. That's still a piece. So
We take back with the e-pawn.
yeah,
File for our rook.
yeah, but that's a piece sacrifice. It's a bit early. It's still in the opening. So I'll tell you that in general, knight a5 is the typical move, but that's not aggressive enough for Alireza. He goes for the more exciting knight b4, immediately counterattacking in the center. e4, and you guessed it, c6. He's immediately undermining white's center, and he's trying to get some play and hopefully open up his bishop. Queen b3, knight d3, bishop e3, c, and knight f4.
What was happening if the knight got picked right away with a3? That was my thought.
Which way? a3? Yeah, it would go knight a6, yes.
c5.
Yeah, it would go c5 and with e4. So a3, here, plan is to go knight c5 and e4, yes. So e4 is played c6, knight d3, and knight f4. If you're actually familiar with Michal Tal's games, well, at least for me, this reminds me of the Botvinnik-Tal game, where Botvinnik faced the knight f4, piece sacrifice. Bishop f3, c takes, e takes d5, g5, gf, ef. Same concept. He's giving up a piece, but he says, okay, I'm going to roam down with my pawns and I'm going to checkmate you. So taking the piece was correct. ef, bishop takes b6, takes, rook e1. So white is saying, okay, go ahead, take my knight, but then I'll get active play. So guess what Firouzja played here? G4? No, it's not what he played. He's trying to keep as many pieces on the board as possible. He played bishop e5. Now, facing attacks like this, let's be honest, is not that easy. Because maybe at home you say that, oh, if I play this long variation, I'm safe. You don't get the luxury when you're playing a live game. You have to calculate it yourself, and you have to decide between many tempting options. So Cori had to choose between going knight g2 and rook takes e5. And it turns out that probably rook takes e5 wasn't as good. Actually, like rook takes e5 here. Probably bishop e2 and bishop b5 would have been more accurate with chances of holding. But rook takes e5, rook takes e5. And so I thought here that, okay, I'm stabilizing. I give up my rook for 2 pieces. That usually provides an advantage for white. But he miscalculated. So he played bishop e4. And now Firouzja is going for the killer attack. Of course, f3. Knight e3. Queen takes b6. Yes, rook h5. So if I go to knight f1, you have queen h3 and I'm getting mated. So my best shot is queen c7. But this runs into a spectacular move. So white is just a move away from defending everything. If the queen arrives on g3, it's done.
So we play g3 or something.
Okay, but if I take?
Rook g5.
Exactly.
Oh, wait.
And then rook g5. So the g3 was the killer move. And in fact, so takes. This happened. I mean, rook h5 was played first. g3, but the same old concept. Knight f1. He's trying to defend, but the problem is that knight is not going to hold out for too long. So in general, should we close the position with black or should we open it? Of course we open it. We have the rooks. We want open files. Yep. GF is played because you want to have some control over the G1 square. King h1, rook g5, setting up this deadly idea of rook g1. Knight g3, bishop h3, bishop takes f3, and now Firouzja to move and win in glorious fashion. That is true. But then white is still fighting for his life.
Right. So there's gotta be some.
We want to win outright. Just logical chess. Rook e8, yes. Rook e8, knight e4. I'm blocking. Seemingly, I'm holding everything together. Well, not so much in reality.
So now
Take c4, yes. Boom. So if bishop e4, as here after rook takes c4, Cori resigned. Now, if I take with knight, I have this beautiful win. Rook g1, takes, and it's checkmate. And you just don't have enough defenders. You just get checkmated in the back rank. But after bishop takes c4, and there's this beautiful finish. Knight takes c4?
Bishop
Yes.
Yeah, queen take e4 and knight.
And bishop g2 checkmate. Beautiful checkmate. Again. So as you can see, Firouzja likes to play with fire, and he's really good at it. Mostly winning. So these were the two games from the Cori Firouzja match, and this was pretty spectacular, I think. And the other last two games I want to show, it was played in Moscow in the Rapid and Blitz World Championships. Now the first one is played against Korobov and the other one is against Carlsen. So let's proceed with that one. So Firouzja, as you might have guessed, is an e4 player because he likes action and goes for the initiative. Now, on the other hand, Korobov is more like a complex player. He doesn't shy away from fighting chess, but he likes strategic chess as well. c5, and if you're familiar with Korobov, it was 90% chance there that it's going to be a Najdorf, and it is indeed a Najdorf. a6, bishop g5, knight d7, bishop c4. In fact, Korobov later turned to e6 in his second game when he played Giri in Moscow. Knight d7, bishop c4, h6. Now, I'm not a big fan of black's play. In fact, black is wasting a lot of time not developing and just chasing the bishop. Now, Firouzja, as we can see, likes active chess. So, did he even consider going backwards? No. So, of course, he took on f6, and he says, okay, I give up the bishop pair, but I'm going for a straight attack in exchange. Knight takes f6, castles, e6, bishop b3, king b1, bishop d7. Now, let's stop right here. At the moment, this looks like a very normal classical Najdorf position. So with white, we have to decide where we want to continue our play. Any ideas where should we start playing and trying to come up with an attack? And it's very important. If white misplays this part of the game, it's very easy to get into dangerous territory. So yeah, f4, f5 makes a lot of sense because the black king is still in the center, so we can't really claim an advantage if we start pushing our pawns with f3, g4 because there's no guarantees that Korobov is going to castle at all.
There's no knight on d7 or c6 anymore to jump into the hole.
Yeah. So he played f4 and rook he1. In fact, in some of my old games as well, white is threatening to do ideas of knight f5, sacrificing and opening it up for the rook. So no wonder Korobov felt, okay, it's due time to castle before anything funny happens. Actually, he didn't. Wow. He played rook c5, probably still against potential sacrifices on f5 and d5. Queen e2. Just getting an extra piece there to go e5. That wasn't really possible because the rook and queen was putting too much pressure on the e5 square. Queen e2. Castles. So if we prepared it, we should play it. And Firouzja plays e5. de, fe, knight h7. And now Firouzja to move and play. If you go knight d5, I mercilessly take you.
Oh, then you play e6.
I defend.
And then e6.
Yeah, but I take everything and I play rook f7, defend my bishop on e7 with the rook.
No, I meant with black's knight d5. Like,
Knight d5, I just take, or
yeah, so it's be like knight take, e take, and then e6.
yeah, but then I exchange that and I have rook f7 in the end.
So was there anything wrong with knight d5?
Yeah, so knight d5 doesn't really work here. I just have too much pressure on that square.
Wait, I'm not talking about the sack.
Black.
I'm talking about black instead of retreating to h7.
Ah, you're talking about knight d5 here.
Yeah.
Well, usually then you would get a really bad structure for black. That's why you're trying to avoid it. And you don't even mind putting the knight on h7. I mean, you mind, you wouldn't like to put it there, but it's better than knight d5. If I play knight d5, definitely your idea of taking on d5 and pushing, that's viable and it's pretty good. But Korobov played knight h7.
Knight f5, perhaps.
Yep, of course. Both of these guys are undefended, so it's just logical that he attacks both of them. Now, if white would face e takes f5, that would be good news, because rook takes d7, and with this bishop having lots of pressure on that f7 square, and this rook harassing all those pieces and pawns, this would be a dreamland for Firouzja. So he played queen d8, Korobov did, queen d3, and he's insistent. He still gives the option, take, please take, then I can take on d7. Rook c7, and now Firouzja comes up with a very nice move, which shows how creative he is in attacking chess. Can you repeat?
I was wondering about knight takes g7 or knight takes
Mm-hmm. I mean, sacking on the king side seems a little bit early because we don't have enough pieces there yet.
Right.
So Firouzja is kind of continuing the same concept of harassing the pieces on e7 and d7. Just he does it in an unusual fashion.
Knight takes e6 or knight take e7 or e6. This was the bishop c6.
Mhm. So if you look at black's position, which of black pieces apart from the h7 knight is misplaced and is a potential target for tactics? The d7 bishop and a little bit the queen on d8. It's a little bit too passive there. In fact, we could use Yes, rook to e4. And that is the big concept, that after e takes, I have rook d4, and you can't really move the bishop because I'll take your queen. And if I take on d7, that's clear advantage, as we talked about it. I have an unopposed white squared bishop on b3, and that's just advantage Firouzja. So Korobov is trying desperately to avoid that. Plays bishop c5. And surprisingly, I'll be honest with you, knight d6 is crying out for myself. I would want to play knight d6. But Firouzja, for some reason, plays knight g3 and says, okay, I'm not in rush to do that. Also note, as this bishop moved, you can't really move that bishop because your queen would be hanging. So black needs to waste some time, but now Firouzja goes on the attack. h4. He's trying to get rid of this queen. And in fact, here Korobov makes a mistake. Should have played queen g6 and trying to offer trades of some sorts. But he went queen e7. But then we go on the offensive now, really. Rook g4, but the same idea of knight h5. Knight h5 now. And suddenly we are swarming in with all our pieces. g6, knight f4. Note that there are some nasty tactical tricks on g6. If you would just play bishop c6, boom! And you can't even capture back because the whole town would be hanging. So Korobov plays rook g8. And even though Firouzja has a better position, it's not yet winning. So if you don't have a winning position yet, don't forget to improve your pieces. And that's exactly what Firouzja does here. Knight e4, exactly. Getting the knight into the center and attacking this bishop. h5, but when the time is right, Firouzja notes to strike. Yes. Be careful that g6 square is still heavily guarded. So obviously the first move is knight h5. G takes h5. Rook takes. King takes. And now there's a splendid tactical idea that Firouzja spots. Knight f6, I take.
Recaptures.
Queen d8.
I missed queen d8. I was playing on playing queen g3 with 4.
But I would run away.
So queen g3 first.
Uh-huh. You started this, you just rotate the move order, and it works.
There we go.
So here, when king h8, if you go king f8, same idea. Actually, yeah, it works this way. Takes. Now I can check you. Bishop takes e6. If you take, I'll check you first, and then just take the queen and the bishop. So if takes, check. Here. In fact, okay, this is even prettier. Not that rook takes d8 is not winning. This is also winning, but queen f8 is a little bit more stylish. And f takes e6 just loses to f7 and promote queens. Double mate and promotion. So Korobov was forced to play king h8, but again, knight f6, the problem is the same. As you pointed out, queen g8 is coming. You can't go back because the d7 is hanging. And if you ever take, then I have the double threat of taking on c7 and queen g7. So to all intents and purposes, white is just completely winning here. Queen f8, knight d7, queen g7. Are we excited to exchange queens? Nah, we were trying to checkmate the guy. Queen f3, queen f1. It's probably trying to maneuver back that knight to f6. Bishop f2, c3. And this is a very nice little move, creating luft for the king. The bishop is coming back to the game. Queen h4, bishop c2, knight g5. Finally, the knight arrives on f6. And now we have nasty ideas over the king side. Also, knight d8 and knight takes c7 is annoying. Rook c8 was played, therefore, queen e2. So he actually just moved the queen back in order to avoid queen trade, but normally he'd still like the queen to be closer to the king. Bishop c5, knight takes h5, bishop e7, g3, just chasing the queen away from the h-file so we can attack it frontally. Queen h3, knight f4, queen h6, queen g2, queen takes b7, and black resigned. And in view of rook e8, bishop a4, as I have just too many pieces attacking the rook and the bishop, so this is just completely lost. So therefore, Korobov resigned. Now, this was kind of an introduction of how Firouzja plays, and I think it'd still be interesting to take a look at the game, that Blitz game that was pivotal for the World Blitz Championship in Moscow. And that game was between Carlsen, Firouzja and Carlsen.
Boros.
Yes.
Big news again. For the first time ever, for the second time in a single night, we have broken the all-time concurrent live viewership for lecture record.
Wow.
So congratulations once again for being the top viewed live lecture ever on this channel.
Wow, thank you. So, in fact, if you look at the styles of these two players, Carlsen used to be this outrageous attacking player in his teenage years, but he changed his style a little bit. It's a little bit more circumspect, more positional. Firouzja is still the young teenager who loves attacking, yes, going for broke. It's very interesting how Carlsen plays and what openings he chooses against Firouzja. So e4, e5. First sign that he's going for the long howl. He's going for the long positional game. Knight f3, bishop b5. By far the most critical line. a6. And a6 is also showing that Carlsen is going for a game. He's not trying to play knight f6 in the Berlin. He's going all out. He wants to have a fighting game. Bishop a4. In fact, I heard that he gave an interview before the game and said that this game is going to be legendary. d6, castle, bishop d7, g6. So now we kind of entered this Steinitz variation. And what's exciting about this choice is that Carlsen is trying to get into more of a strategical battle against Firouzja. d4, bishop g7, h3. And it kind of works in some aspects, as Firouzja is aiming to get active piece play. Usually, according to the theory, d5 should be the best move. Knight e7 takes, bishop e3, h6, knight d2, f3, c4. And this is considered to be an advantageous King's Indian-like position. But Firouzja is not as familiar with d4 openings. He's more of an e4 player. And this could eventually lead to a more slower strategic game. So Firouzja probably consciously avoids that. And goes h3. Knight f6, bishop c2, rook e1. And this is kind of funny and probably the best pairings in chess whenever two styles clash. Whenever you see a tactically gifted player play a positional player, those are usually very exciting. Rook e8, knight d2. So you can see that Firouzja sticks to the plan of keeping this position dynamic. Queen e7, but also you can see that Carlsen is happy to maneuver in the back rank. Knight f1. And if you look at this position, from the black's perspective, which piece is the most awful one? If you could pinpoint that. That black would be happy to give away or exchange it away. Well, the c6 knight, not that much. It just defends there. There's not much that we could do with it at the moment. Maybe in the future. Maybe in the future, but not in the moment.
I would say the good bishop on d7.
d7? No, we...
Really have a clear place to go.
I mean,
Yeah.
this bishop, even though it looks passive, it's still very important in this King's Indian type of structure. So whenever White would decide to go d5, this would be very important in the attack. It's mostly the King's Indian like bishop on g7 that Black would like to get rid of. You can't really do anything with it. So Carlsen comes up with a plan trying to exchange this one off. Yeah, king h8, knight g8 is another way of playing. And with bishop h6, he goes on and plays queen f8. Same idea, but he also gets out of the way and stuff. So knight g3, bishop h6. Now, I kind of like Firouzja's reaction. He says, okay, you want to exchange off the bishops. Now, yeah, if this was a friendly game, I would exchange, but this is not a friendly game, so I'm going to keep my bishop, thank you. And now comes game plan number 2. Black will try to get rid of that knight on g5. And that can only be done with some maneuvering. And if you ask Carlsen, he's ready to maneuver. So how could we exchange this knight off? Possibly. Yeah, I said exchange it off, yes. Uh-huh. Knight d8. So this looks like a very funky move. It's very rare. You rarely see this idea. And in fact, I think Firouzja should have played d5 here. Because then this knight would feel a little bit awkward on d8. On the other hand, we do get into positional and strategic play, but I do feel that this knight would be so misplaced that White should be somewhat better in this King's Indian-like position. Now he doesn't play d5, he plays bishop b3, knight e6, and would Firouzja like exchanges? Nah, no. h4. Rook d8, and he plays bishop e3. In fact, knight f5 would have been an interesting idea. Yeah. Yeah. So takes, and then there would be some pressure on the f7 square.
Another game there was a knight on h4.
Yeah. Yeah, that game, the Cori game, yes. So this was an interesting idea. Probably is just interesting. But Firouzja is being conservative here and played bishop e3. Now, Carlsen notices that knight f5 is looming in the air. So he decides to go back to g7. And that is kind of the sense of danger you need to become a really good player. Once you spot your opponent has a big idea, you move away from the threat. h5, bishop h6. And again, this is kind of funny. He goes back as he sees that once you move the pawn, you don't have a defender. So now this knight on g5 is a little bit more loose. So here he played queen c1, but probably there were some ideas of queen f3. And if black takes, knight takes, queen takes f6, it's roughly even with black having play on the king side. It's still a complicated game, but definitely queen f3 was an option. Probably, I think that queen f3 would have been a better choice. Queen c1, but I think Firouzja here missed Carlsen's next move. He probably thought that there's just too much pressure on the h6 bishop. He has knight e6 ideas. This should be good for him. But it turns out it's not the case. Yes, exactly. Knight g4. And suddenly, the hunter gets hunted. And the queen actually will have chances to invade and set up some mating ideas. Knight takes e6, f takes e6. And again, the problem is for white you can't really take because queen f2, queen g3, and I win the house. Takes, take, and not only I have an extra pawn, I also have mating threats. So at this moment, Firouzja is down on the clock. This is a blitz game, if you didn't know. And Carlsen must have felt being in the driver's seat. Rook f1. This is actually a peculiar move. At first sight, I didn't like this rook f1 move.
Is there a threat?
Knight f2 is that bishop is still hanging. Probably bishop takes e3 is the one that's really threatened. Rook f1, and I think here Carlsen made a rash decision. I think he wanted to make sure that he has an advantage for sure. But I think he should have taken on e3 with the bishop and go either queen h6 or queen e7. With the idea of invading with queen h4 and get your pieces in and just go for the attack. But probably Carlsen at this moment felt that, okay, if I take on e3, fe, queen e7, there's no way there could be any trouble. That's what he thought. H takes, queen d2. But now Firouzja is going to put up some stiff defense. Queen d2, this was a very good move. Connecting the two rooks, also, coming closer to the king side, making sure that that knight will have a safe defender. E takes, c takes. Probably e takes is also a little bit dodgy, but I could understand Carlsen here because he's trying to win this game. And he's sure that he has the advantage, he has the bishop pair, and so that knight is on g3 is a little misplaced and has a weak king. So it is just logical to take on d4. C takes d4. On the other hand, it kind of improves white's pieces a little bit. King g7, rook f3. And this is a really good move, defending this weakness and stabilizing the knight on g3. Rook f8, rook f1, takes, rook f8, queen c3. And suddenly, with the rooks exchanged off, white is not much worse anymore. In fact, he's putting a lot of pressure on the king. There's some d5 ideas sometimes. And if you make the wrong pawn pushes, this bishop will get really active. c6, knight f1. So the computer kind of suggests ideas of e5, but note that they're they only have minutes at this point. So e5 is very, very tempting, but can be double-edged. If it's bad, it's really bad. So he goes knight f1. He's just trying to stabilize. e5, and probably e5, and this is the turning point. From this on, it's going to be Firouzja who's going to be pressing. Rook takes f8, king takes f8, queen c4. And suddenly, it is white who's attacking. Because this knight is defending the only weakness on e3, and this battery is just very powerful. And note that these pawns are not entirely protected. Queen f6, but this was a big mistake. And now it's Firouzja to move and take advantage. So you'd assume that there's some drama on the king side. But the trick is, the drama is not on the king side. It's actually on the other side of the board. Yes, d takes e4, e5. And instead of queen g8 stuff, which black could parry easily, queen b4 check, and suddenly the pawn is dropping. c5, queen takes b7, bishop b5, queen c8 check. And in fact, this is the moment when Carlsen was really upset with himself, and he even physically showed it at the board, which is understandable if you look at it. He had a stable advantage, and suddenly he's down 2 pawns. So it's clearly not going the way he expected it to be. Queen d6, queen takes, king takes d6, bishop f7. Bishop takes f1, g5. Now, technically this looks winning and should be winning, but to set up the scene, Firouzja was getting really nervous. He was kind of moving around and like dropping pieces. On the other hand, Carlsen just messed up his winning position. And remember, this is move 40. By now, they're down to seconds. So they're around 8 and 10 seconds at this moment. King e2, bishop f8, king e7. So far, good play by Firouzja. He's winning. He's not rushing, as we've learned that recently. Fixes the pawn on g5, and that's just perfect. And now, it's just time to create another passer. Bishop d8, b4. Also note how Carlsen defends. He built a fortress, or sort of a fortress, and he's not making any commitments. So he's waiting for Firouzja to decide how he's trying to go forward. Takes, bishop e7, b5, bishop d8, king g6, and suddenly Carlsen has to make a decision. So he goes king c5, decides to take this pawn. King f5, takes, king c5, king e6, bishop a5, e5, bishop d2. And in fact, I think this was the critical moment. Now, if you've seen the videos, and there are many videos out there of this game, at this moment, Firouzja has around, I think, 5-6 seconds. So he still could make a decision. The situation is tense. And in fact, that is why it's so important to have composure when you're playing the game of chess, because sometimes the best moves are not the most logical ones. So it's white to move, and that would have won the game. You have 7 if I take the bishop.
Like e6, assuming this label bishop b4 is 4 is 4.
Mhm.
And then e7, take. And then, but there's still a pawn on e3 that needs to go collect. c4, king f6, king take e3, king take g5.
Yes. Exactly. So e4 was played, but king f7 would have won the game. And to be honest, that's why it's important to keep calm, because king f7 is by no means the most logical move. Why would you give up your bishop or pawn when you could keep all the pawns on the board? And it's very interesting if you look at it with the computer. e4 is +2, meaning white is up just 2 pawns. King f7 is +10.
Wow.
So the most,
Not a good sign.
yeah, so
You're up 2 pawns.
yes. So e4, even the most logical move, it is not even entirely clear if Firouzja is winning after that move. But after king f7, this would be a win. The only thing that he would have needed to make sure that he has 1 extra pawn, and in the end he's going to collect the g5 pawn and then just promote that. The king can't really take both of those. You'll take the e pawn, I'll take the g, and then I just go and rush my g pawn up and win. And after e4, and as the computer points out, this position is not that easy to win, and by now they'll be just rushing the moves. King c7, and now Carlsen builds up this fortress, which is not that easy to break at all. g5, king g4, and after bishop d2, as we all know, Firouzja ran out of time here. Now there was the controversy and there was an appeal. Firouzja appealed that this shouldn't be considered a win, but according to the FIDE regulations, if there is a position that you could set up and that would be possible to checkmate in that case, then it's a win for the side who has the last pieces.
Does such a position require white to promote something? And then
No,
is
no,
there one here?
probably some. So I'm not sure if that is the best rule on the planet,
Is there
but it does make some sense in the case that if there would be some extra pawns, you could imagine that white could lose. And also, I think there were some increments, as far as I know, at this tournament. So Firouzja just needed to make more moves, not to run out of time. On the other hand, I do understand, I mean, if you ask a master or grandmaster, you wouldn't believe that white could lose this. But according to the FIDE rules, this is a win for black if white flags.
Okay, he doesn't have to promote anything because he could have his king on
Yeah.
h8 and the bishop
Yeah,
on
if the
g8.
king would be set up in the corner, that would be the theoretical win for black, but obviously that wouldn't happen. So in fact, the reason I thought it's interesting to show this game is that Firouzja was playing really well, but then he got nervous by the end. And instead of trying to go for broke and try to go for the best move, and I do understand you have 4 seconds left and you're playing the world champion, but if he gets that composure in the future, probably he's going to be a great contender for the title. And in fact, this was a very important game. After this one, Carlsen managed to clinch both the World Blitz Championship title, both the World Blitz and the World Rapid Championship title. So this was a very critical game for his Blitz match and chances. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lecture on Firouzja's chess, and you can see he has this very attractive, aggressive style, but if he will have extra composure, probably he'll be someone to be dealt with. And he's going to play in January in Vikanze, so don't miss him. It's going to be very interesting. With that, thank you so much for watching. Thank you.